What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another album review, and today I am talking about the latest offering from the Troops of Doom, a Mass to the Grotesque. This also came out on May 31st, and this was on, I believe, a.k.a. Mater Records. I probably got the label wrong, but this is the second album from this Brazilian death thrash band, and I got curious to check this one out because of one particular member of this band, former Sepultura guitarist Yaro Guedes, otherwise known as Tormentor, his stage name. And he was a guitarist back in the early days of Sepultura from 85 to 87, so he played on Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions before Andreas Kisser took his spot. But, you know, when I saw Yaro's name on this, I'm like, this has to be interesting. And I was not prepared for the fun I was having with this album. And after you get through the kind of pointless intro, you get into the true opening track, Chapels of the Unholy, immediately into death thrash madness. And also what's cool about this album, artwork is done by Dan Seagrave. While the album was produced in Brazil, it was mixed and mastered by one Jim Morris at More Sound Studios. So the More Sound legacy continues to this day. Thank you, Jim Morris, as well as your brother Tom, for keeping that going, because the production of this album definitely has that like late 80s, early 90s death thrash More Sound production to it. And what's really cool about the production, it's very even, the bass is even audible, maybe to the point where it might have been just a notch too much up front above the guitars, but they do match up pretty damn well across the board on this album. Like I said, this just has this late 80s, early 90s old school feel to it from that More Sound Gold Rush, probably my favorite era of death metal still to this day. And yeah, it was just really, really cool to hear Jim Morris back in the game doing mixing and mastering and some production. But yeah, right out of the gate with this track, in terms of songwriting, immediately you're getting what you're going to get across the board on this album. Nods to Sepultura, Vader especially, Sodom, Creator. But as we continue on, some other bands I kind of picked up influence from show up on here. Then we get in, and actually on Chapels of the Unholy, there's a really cool section where it gets into a groove and tremolo riffs that feel very much like Morbid Angel, and you know how much I love Morbid Angel worship when done right. This was done right with this, like, and it's more or less kind of like early Morbid Angel, like Altars of Madness, Blessed Are the Sick, Covenant, like that early David Vincent era. That's kind of what it reminded me of, this section of the song. So immediately off to the races with a hell of an opening track. And then the album, it just continues to just go batshit insane. We get into Dawn of Mephisto, which was one of the longer tracks at like over 6 minutes. And here is where you get another influence coming across this entire album. The melodies remind me so much of latter era death, like Spiritual Healing all the way through to the Sound of Perseverance, like that 90s era of death with the melodies and the harmonies. It's like Yaro and I forget the name of the second guitarist, it's like they're channeling Chuck Schuldiner whenever coming up with these harmonies and melodies with some of the riffs that they're going for. It's like, you guys did excellent with that, with all that going on. But then after that cool melody, it kind of turns into more of a straight-up thrash song. Very much like Slayer, I would say. Like, Slayer kind of comes up a couple of times on this album. And there's even little hardcore moments that pop up on this track, as well as some different melodies that don't sound like death. Denied Divinity, this one kind of feels like a hodgepodge of death, Creator, and Vader. Like, the thrashiness definitely kind of gives me a Creator vibe, but when it comes to like the speed of the riffing, definitely feels a lot like Vader. And Vader's maybe the fastest death metal band of all time in terms of just non-blast beat speed. But again, the melodies, more of that death vibe, and there's even like really nasty nasty tremolos. And I gotta admit, the lead work on this album is just flying. Like, there's shred, there's some cool dive bombs, some tapping sections that come up towards the end of the album, but also still retain a little bit of melody and feeling to them. The Imposter King, this one just goes straight forward Vader worship with the riff work, the blast beats, but you do get some riffs that show up later on that definitely reminded me a lot of Sodom, I would say. But then we get into Faithless Requiem, and this is, as well as I would say, Terror Inheritance, definitely the most Sepultura-inspired songs that I heard, and it almost sounds like both of these tracks could have been on, like, Schizophrenia or Beneath the Remains to some extent. Although in Faithless Requiem, there was even some strange melodies that showed up later in the song. But then we get to the big one in terms of the length, over 8 minutes, with Psalm 7-8, God of Bizarre. Kind of starts off slower, but again, more of those death melodies and harmonies show up. Then you get some, like, really cool death metal chugs and tribal beats. Then it kind of takes a break with an ambient moment to build up. And then there's some groove and gallops going on. And then diarrhea blast beats kind of just pop up and seemingly out of nowhere on this track. But with Terror Inheritance, not only do I get some Sepultura in here, but some of the riffs reminded me a lot of Possessed, I would say. Like, it has a little bit of that, like, Seven Churches era feeling to some of the riff work on this track. And also, little harmonies get peppered in here. Then we get to the song The Grotesque, and I actually like how the guitars start this song off. It sounds like it could have been off of, like, a big horror movie from the 70s, almost like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like Bubba's just coming at you with the chainsaw and is like, I want to eat your penis or something like that. Let me have your face, you motherfuckers. It's kind of like the guitars would almost fit perfectly with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then it builds into like a lumbering groove and chug that kind of reminded me a little bit of Bolt Thrower, I would say. But then it goes right back into thrash with some dark melodies on top and then some awesome blast beats and even little moments of dissonant riffs and a nice breakdown. Blood Upon the Throne, this one, again, more death melodies, but then the song kind of goes into Blood Red Throne, and I don't mean to sound ironic considering the title's Blood Upon the Throne, but the chugs and the grooves and the riffs definitely reminded me of the 2000s era of Blood Red Throne, but then it does get into more like Creator-esque thrash. But then we get to the closing track, Venomous Creed. This one's kind of all over the map in terms of speed. Like, it starts off a little bit doomier, kind of like a doomy Slayer riff. Then it goes right back into flat-out Vader territory. Then you get like triplet swings that remind me of Slayer. And then, of course, the big leads that are going everywhere. Even a melodic doom section and an eerie, clean melody to kind of add to the horror themes to bring the album to a close. So yeah, album-wise, in terms of the songs, so energetic. It's thrashy. It's got lots of death metal to it. Some cool melodies that remind me a lot of what Chuck did back in the day. And the production definitely has that like late 80s, early 90s Morrisound feel to it, thanks to one of the founding fathers of Morrisound Studios. As far as any complaints, I really don't have any really at all, except maybe the most minor of grievances is that perhaps some of these songs can run into one another because of just how ferocious it is. But that's just a nitpick for me. But honestly, this could go down as one of the albums that will be on the Album of the Year list. I am going to give this a 4.5 out of 5. Like, I was not expecting this level of insanity and awesomeness when it came down to the music, as well as the production. Like, just everything about it, I absolutely love. So, if you're a fan of 90s era death, Sepultura, Vader especially, Sodom, Creator, maybe a little bit of Morbid Angel, Slayer. It's just a hodgepodge of like old school thrash metal and early death metal just all wrapped into one. Definitely check this out. I am probably going to have to pick up a copy of this at some point. But anyways, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.